All right, guys, happy Wednesday. Here we are again, subtracting mixed numbers. Today I'm going to step up the challenge by subtracting numbers, mixed numbers, with unlike or different denominators. Okay, so whenever we subtract mixed numbers, we always need to look at our fractions first, okay? Because we always have to think about, is the top number greater than the bottom number? Because if the top number is not greater than the bottom number, then we have to regroup, okay? So, looking at these two fractions, I know that 5/6 is greater than 2/3, okay? But I'm also going to show you a trick on how to double check that, okay? So I know I am going to be able to take 2/3 away from 5/6. However, they have different denominators. So again, whenever they have different denominators, we always have to ask ourselves, is one a multiple of the other? And lucky for us, one is a multiple of the other. I know that if I skip count by 3, I'm eventually going to hit 6. Therefore, I do not need to rename this fraction as an equivalent fraction. I'm just going to leave it as 5/6. But for 2/3, I have to think about what is an equivalent fraction. So I know that if I multiply 3 by 2, I will get 6. Now, whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 2 times 2 is 4, okay? So here's a good way to check to make sure that you can subtract 4/6 from 5/6. Well, this is an easier way to know that this number is larger than this number because 5 is greater than 4. So can I subtract 4/6 from 5/6? I sure can. And when I do that, I get 1/6. Okay? So don't forget though, you also need to subtract your whole numbers. So 3 minus 1 is 2. All right, so my final answer is 2 and 1/6. All right, let's try another one, okay? So looking at my mixed numbers here, I first always want to look at my fractions to think about, is my top number greater than my bottom number? Because if my top number is less than my bottom fraction here, then I know that I need to regroup, okay? So looking here, I know 3/4 is greater than 1/5, so I know I can take 1/5 away from 3/4. However, they do not have a common denominator. So whenever I don't have a common denominator, I always have to ask myself, is one a multiple of the other? Well, looking here, I know that if I skip count by 5, I will never hit 4. And if I skip count by 4, I'll never hit 5. So I have to find a common denominator of them both. So hopefully by now you're starting to see some patterns on how to find common denominators. So if I were to list these out, 16, 20, 5, oops, hold on, let me just erase that. 5, 10, 15, 20. Some of you may have already known that our common denominator was 20. But this is always, when you list them out, it's always a nice way also for you to figure out what the factor is that you're going to multiply your denominator by. So I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can multiply 4 by 5 to get 20. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to go ahead and do to the top. Okay? So 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, let's see, 5 times the factor of 4 is going to give me 20. So 1 times 4 is 4, okay? So again, always double check when you have Regrouped is, not regrouped, excuse me, when you have renamed your fraction, is the top number still greater? And 15/20 is definitely greater than 4/20. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 15 minus 4, and that's 11. Okay, so my fraction is 11/20, and then I'm going to go ahead and come over here and subtract 2 from 4, and that's 2 and 11/20. All right, let me go over one more with you guys, okay? So again, we're first going to look at our fractions here, and we're first going to think about, is 7/8 less than 9/10? Or can I take 7/8 away from 9/10? Well, I know automatically that 7/8 is less than 9/10, so I am going to be able to subtract it from 9/10, okay? But here we go again, we don't have common denominators. So I need to go ahead and find a common denominator for 10 and 8, okay? Now, I bet some of you are going to be quick to say, well, I know that a common denominator is 80. Well, that is a common denominator that they both have, but it's not the least common multiple or least common denominator that you can have. And remember, before we left on this crazy, unusual, long vacation, I said that it's much easier when you're dealing with smaller numbers, okay? So before you jump to the conclusion that 80 is going to be a great denominator, write out your multiples here. 30, 40. Already, I know that I have a much smaller denominator that I could use, because I know 40 is a multiple of 8, because if I were to skip count by 8, 24, 32, 40. 40 is much easier for me to work with than 80, okay? So, what do I need to multiply 10 by to get 40? Well, I know 10 times 4 is going to give me 40. So whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, okay? So now I have to figure out what 9 times 4 is. And 9 times 4 is 36, okay? Come down to my bottom here. I know 8 times 5 is 40. What I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top, okay? So now I have to figure out what 7 times 5 is, and I know that's 35. Whoa, those two fractions are close together, 36/40 and 35/40. But I still know that 36/40 is greater than 35/40. So again, that's a great way to check, to make sure that you can take this number away from this number. So when I do that, I get 1/40, okay? And then 5 minus 4 is 1. All right, there you go. Okay, so I have one more problem for you guys, and this is going to be review of the problems that you guys worked on yesterday. Now, notice right now I'm keeping these denominators the same, but tomorrow we are going to get even more in challenge mode, and I am going to have you be subtracting mixed numbers where you have to change the common denominator and you have to regroup, okay? But today we're just going to focus on baby steps. So here we go. So here is review from yesterday. So again, looking at our fractions here, I know 7/10 is greater than 3/10. So I cannot subtract 7/10 from 3/10. So I need to go over to my 5 and I need to borrow a whole. So if I borrow a whole, my 5 is going to become 4, okay? Remember, we always have to go down a whole, okay? Some of you forgot to do that yesterday. You kept that number the same, but you always need to go down a whole because I'm trading out a whole for 10/10, right? because if I had a whole, I would split it into 10 parts and color it in, it would be 10 tenths. So now I would have 4 and 13 tenths. Okay? So I can subtract 7 tenths from 13 tenths, and I get 6 tenths. Okay? Now 2 minus 4 is 2. Okay? So my final answer would be 2 and 6 tenths. Some of you may be able to see that 6 tenths is not in its simplest form, because I could divide each of these by 2 and get 2 and 3/5. But that would just be an added challenge and bonus for you guys. So if you were able to see that, good for you. Okay, so I am going to have some more practice problems today for you guys, okay, which are going to include these 2 types of subtraction problems. So make sure you are first looking at those fractions and saying, can I subtract this number from the top number, okay? If not, you're going to have to be regrouping. Tomorrow, get ready. You are going to see some new challenging subtraction with mixed numbers where we're going to regroup and find common denominators, okay? So hopefully you will feel confident and a-okay with these problems today. I will be back on tomorrow. Have a good day.